Welcome back. Labour unions are urging government to think wisely and listen before following through on a plan to cut around 30,000 public sector jobs. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana made the announcement during the midterm budget policy statement last month. The plan would see 11 billion rand being used to tempt tens of thousands of public servants into taking early retirement. Let's speak now to Richard Mamabolo, who's a spokesperson for Popcru. Very good evening to you. From Popcru's side, what's your stance on this move?
Good evening to you and the viewers. Yes, indeed, we did hear the announcement by the Minister of Finance. We are quite worried because you'd remember that for the longest of time, public servants have obviously been losing their jobs. And we have learned that there are around 300,000 vacant posts within the public service. Now, over the past year, we've also seen a lot of public servants retiring. In fact, within the criminal justice cluster, there was a time when there were a lot of retirements due to some incentives which were promised by government. And in the recent years, we've been seeing a lot of those who had retired coming back into the service. Now, this happens, of course, as well against a situation wherein you have, for example, in the Department of Correctional Services, back in 2009, we had a staff complement of 40,000 members who were directly involved with, interacting with inmates. The number has since went down to 27,000. And this happens at a time when you've got a prison population of around 156,000, which is 48% overcrowding. In the SAPS as well, in 2010, during the World Cup, we had 200,000 officers. The numbers are currently 178,000. And just recently, there was an announcement that our population is now 63 million people. And again, within his maiden State of the Nation address in the sixth administration, the president had made a commitment that we need to have violent crimes by half. Now, when you will introduce cost-cutting measures, which would obviously affect the number of people who are employed into the public service, it therefore means that government is on a notion that we need to do more while actually having lesser capacity, which is unworkable. And for us within the criminal justice cluster, it's going to become more of a problem because we've got rising numbers of criminality. Recently, we were complaining about skilled detectives leaving the service going into private companies. And for the past 2 years, you would know that government has been recruiting around 10,000 new officers into the SAPS. That, of course, has not been sufficient because at the same time, on a year-to-year basis, we realized that we're losing about 7,000 police officers due to natural attrition and, of course, a variety of other challenges. So if we are really to capacitate the state, we would definitely have to ensure that we save jobs. There are also a lot of vacant funded posts, funded vacant posts, which have not been filled for quite some time, in the nursing sector, within the healthcare, within police as well, and many other public departments. And that, of course, has actually resulted in the members who are left not having the capacity to actually do their work to the fullest.
Yeah, and when we think about the impact, it is quite dire, particularly when we think about policing. But this is, of course, a measure by government to try and tackle what's been known as a bloated national wage bill. So how do you as Popcru then propose that government tries to cut those costs?
To say the public service is bloated is actually not actually factual. We think that governments need to consider other avenues really. Since COVID-19, in fact, since 2017, we've had wage freezes. Public servants have not been getting an increase on their salaries, and even as we speak now, there are wage negotiations going on within the Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council, wherein government wants to give employers less than around 4.7%, which is obviously below inflation rate. So the cost of living of most of these members has not been actually improving. And if we want to actually empower the state and ensure that the economy grows, you need to have more people working, more finances in circulation. And that can only happen through ensuring that because the government is the biggest employer in the country, you need to obviously ensure that you create more jobs and you ensure that the conditions of service for members are improved. So to say that well, it's bloated. I don't think it's actually factual. In fact, it's about what government wants to prioritize over improving the lives of workers for us.
Well, it was also said in the midterm budget speech as well, it was noted that the public service wages greatly exceeded the private sector pays as well. So, and this was also reported in News 24. So it has been greatly reported and also said by government themselves that they are exceeding the number of how much they pay for each person, how much they pay them when you compare it to the private sector.
Government has not come to have a sit down with labor through even what you call bargaining councils, wherein there is an engagement around how we can actually look into ensuring that as much as they might feel that they are overpaying within the public service, they need to, how do we then comprehend that and ensure that at least we strike a balance? In as far as we are concerned, government has actually been negotiating in bad faith, as is the current case now with the current wage negotiations, because remember that for the longest of time, workers' salaries have not been increasing. And in fact, even in 2018, there was a resolution taken, well, an agreement that was signed by government, and the third leg was reversed by government. The government reneged on the third leg of that agreement. They even took labor to court. They took workers to court. So we need to have a platform wherein we of course, we've got an interest in ensuring that our economy thrives, and that can only be done through ensuring that there are proper services, and these services are supposed to be delivered by public servants as the biggest employer in the country, more than the private sector. So there needs to be a discussion around how we can find each other. But for government to take unilateral decisions, especially the treasury, wherein they feel that there are some super ministry wherein, despite the objectives that government sets itself, they will do something different. That cannot continue. And it's unfortunate that now we're entering a new terrain. We're in the seventh administration, which is constituted by what you call a government, or a government of national unity, with different political parties. Some of those parties have been against labor rights from their inception, since the inception of these rights back in 1996. And we are likely to face more hostilities as compared to what has been happening in the past.
Earlier you were mentioning, Richard, also the impacts that it will have on crime, that will have less but have to do more to tackle this big problem called crime. Is there also a concern about a skills shortage? Speaking to your members as well, those who have institutional knowledge, senior members as well, are they looking to take this package? And if we do lose senior members of the police service, what does that look like for the rest of the country when it comes to fighting crime?
That is likely the case. In fact, it has already started happening. Like I said, that we are currently in wage negotiations. And what is quite clear is that the likelihood of, workers getting more remuneration is unlikely to happen. They are getting below inflation rate increases. And for the longest of time, of course, even within the specialized services within the SAPS, we've been seeing a lot of people leaving for the private sector because they pay more, they've got better benefits. And of course, it does not only apply within the criminal justice cluster, in the health sector as well, and many other sectors, we are seeing such trends where members are leaving. So if you were a person of a matured age, over 55 years, and you know that you are supposed to retire within the next 10 or so years, the sensible thing that most would do would be to leave the service so that they can get as much as they can for now, because clearly their lives are not going to improve in any way as it relates to the offers that are being put on the table currently. So government as well, when they encourage people to retire, the sad thing about it is that you also have, like I indicated, that you do not have their funded vacant posts, which are many. You do not have those posts being filled. So that then decreases the capacity of the state. And the SAPS, for example, is one such critical sector wherein we need to fight crime. So you cannot fight crime with lesser police officers on the ground, whilst you've got a growing population.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Richard Mamabolo, for your time. That is Popcru spokesperson, Richard Mamabolo.